Hi, my name is Jason Waite. I grew up on a family farm in Cloverdale and went to a small school with 60 kids from kindergarten to grade 7. Life was great. There was no hate or bullying. It just wasn't allowed, and all the kids knew that. As a small child, I knew about Jesus in ways that children do. I saw him as a good person that people loved. I went to Sunday school and I remember always feeling safe there. My life was pretty good until halfway through grade 7 when life started changing for me. My mom and dad moved us off the family farm. My new school had 600 kids. Right away I felt out of place, overwhelmed, and scared. After the summer of grade 7, I got picked on the very first day of school. I couldn't believe how grown up all the other kids seemed. They all had the clothes and stuff I could only dream of. I saw grade 8 kids smoking and I just thought to myself, how am I going to get through 5 years of this? Throughout the next few years of high school, I got bullied almost every day. One day I fought back and I actually won. All of a sudden I had gained respect from my peers and I had found a way to deal with my fear. I learned then that if I showed the world my anger and intimidation, that everything would be better for me. So that's the way I decided to live my life. Because of that decision, I began to hang out with crowds that were up to no good. I started smoking, fighting, got into drugs and alcohol, and gave up school. Once I dropped out of high school, I started drinking every day. I hung around with an older crowd that was into criminal activity. At that time of my life, being involved in something, anything, meant the world to me. I drove intoxicated every day, and looking back now, there's not a doubt in my mind that Jesus saved my life many times. I basically spent 20 years of my life drinking, doing drugs, seeking relationships, and involved in criminal activity. I was never satisfied. I always chose those things over the things in life that really matter. I hated being that way. But I just couldn't stop, despite failed relationships and losing my kids. The guilt and shame that I had over the things I had done to myself, my family, and others eventually drove me to the point of seriously considering taking my life. I did not believe in God. I had pushed everybody in my life that cared away from me, and I thought that the world would be better without me in it. One day, a friend of mine reached out who had gotten clean and sober herself. Through a 12-step program, I finally got down on my knees and surrendered myself to God. Then another friend of mine invited me to attend Southside with him that weekend. My first time at Southside, I couldn't believe how accepting and real everyone was. When I heard the worship team, I was overwhelmed with emotion. When I heard Pastor Mike speak, I couldn't believe how clear the message was coming through. The way that his words resonated with me was a feeling that I'd never felt before. It was amazing to me how similar our childhood experiences were. So many of his personal stories hit home with me, almost like he knew everything I'd gone through in my life, because he had experienced so many of those things himself. I remember Pastor Mike talking about Luke 15. Suppose one of you had 100 sheep and lost one. Wouldn't you leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the lost one until you found it? When found, you can be sure you would put it across your shoulders, rejoicing. And when you got home, call in your friends and neighbors, saying, "Celebrate with me. I've found my lost sheep." Count on it. There's more joy in heaven over one sinner's rescued life than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. Inside, I knew that this parable was for me that day. Inside, I knew that I was the lost sheep. And then Pastor Mike asked if anybody was feeling like there was a darkness inside of them or praying for something to come back into their life. And I remember closing my eyes and raising my hand. I prayed my own prayer to Jesus that day. I asked him that if he could keep me sober, then I would try to live my life the way he wanted me to. It felt like a truck had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt free for the first time in my life. Tears just rolled down my face as I walked out of the sermon. As I walked out of there, people were saying, "See you next Sunday." And without hesitation, I was like, "See you next Sunday." And I've hardly missed a Sunday since. God is teaching me that it is possible to live a better life than I even thought. Because of God and Southside, I've been sober for 3 years now. Because of that, my 2 daughters that I haven't been able to see for 3 years came back into my life. It wasn't until this Father's Day, 3 years of being sober and surrendering myself to God, that I got to see my kids again. I know today that as long as I trust in Jesus, it's only going to get better. God has completely changed my life. I'm sober. I have a great girl that I'm going to marry. I have my kids back in my life and a new great group of friends and mentors. Today, God is number one in my life, and because of him, I know I can genuinely be excited for what the future holds. The best is yet to come.